Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins. With me tonight, Billy Beeman. Jake is not with us tonight, but that's okay. He's here in spirit.
Absolutely. What's going on, man?
Not much.
Dude, I'm just enjoying our DU5 draft, man. Like it is an absolute blast. Like that's really where my head's been at. I mean, we have some great prospect profiles tonight. It's pretty much been prospect profile season and draft season, which has been pretty amazing for the off season. So,
It's kind of
um,
the best time.
I highly recommend. Like we do our one listener league startup every year, like the week after the NFL, after the Super Bowl,
hmm
and it's just so great. Like having that, it's like basically the season never ends in a way, and so it's like really nice having that kind of just kickstart your off season. So I highly recommend it for those who haven't
yeah,
done it.
I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, news and nonsense. So, hey, this is just a little something that Billy wanted to bring up. But yeah, talking about Scary Terry McLaurin there in Washington. Um, he's asking, is this the
Worship.
Benjamin Button of wide receivers? Dude's going on 29, but had a pretty damn good year last year. And honestly, just
Mhm.
been underrated, I think, his entire career. Like, I don't think he's ever been overdrafted. Like, maybe he has. Like, what? I'd have to go check to verify that that's true, but I feel like he's probably outperformed ADP by at least a little bit for the most part, like his entire career.
Easily. In his rookie draft, he was going in the third or fourth round.
Yeah.
He's always been underrated, and he's never been a super, high pick in startup drafts. And even the one we're in right now that I was just talking about, he went fairly late there too. And so I was looking at the board and I'm like, man, this guy, he's just like he's in such a good situation. Finally gets his quarterback, and I'm like, damn, he's 29 years old. It's like how many years does he actually have left? But for some reason, he feels super young. Like the way he plays doesn't feel old at all right now. Like he kind of feels like a young receiver. Granted, he came into the league old. I mean, I don't remember his college usage. I know he was a good player. I remember liking him coming out,
Yes, you
but
did.
I don't remember him being like highly used. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it in terms of like maybe a longer shelf life. These guys age out a little bit better, but man, I don't know, just something about him seems like he's going to play well into his 30s and play pretty well, and so he just seems like one of those guys that is going to defy the odds. I don't know, how do you feel about him?
I mean, basically just everything you said. I honestly, another thing that I was just trying to think about, maybe because I haven't really rostered a lot of Terry McLaurin, I haven't noticed
Mm-hmm.
he hasn't missed a lot of games, has he? Like he's been healthy too, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I think he had like maybe one, like maybe like I feel like I remember like an ankle injury or something that kind of held him back for a stretch at some point, but he's been pretty healthy for the most part. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like how do you feel about him as a dynasty asset? You say he has a wide receiver 24 behind Addison, Moore, DJ Moore.
Yeah.
Okay, Worthy and Olave. Like,
Yeah. I mean, some of that seems to make sense, but like Addison, is like he ever gonna really? I mean, I
I
don't
think
know.
I want
Go ahead.
Terry over Addison and Moore, and I think there's a case for a lot.
And DJ Moore. Well, you can't stand Caleb Williams, so I mean it's part of the
I never
problem
said anything
there.
about Caleb. What do you mean? I think he's fine.
I mean, I guess currently McLaurin has less competition technically than DJ Moore. So I mean, I
Yeah.
guess that may be part of the equation there.
Well, I don't know if DJ Moore's ever been what we wanted DJ Moore to be. I think he's a very good wide receiver. Um,
Mm-hmm.
just he's just always been okay. Has nothing to do with Caleb Williams.
So yeah, McLaurin was at 15.5 points per game this past season. DJ Moore at 13.5.
Okay, yeah,
So he's pretty. That's a pretty substantial number ahead of Moore. But that's last year. I mean, you would maybe expect him to improve, I guess, in year two with Jaden Daniels. So yeah, I mean, I think I would take him over Addison as well, and potentially more. Worthy's, I think he's on the rise. So from a dynasty value asset, I think he's probably
you
a
kind of
better
have to
asset.
go in
Honestly,
that
I,
direction.
I I might go for McLaurin over Olave. I'm not super giddy about Olave, his situation, his health, all that. So he has obviously much in theory, longer shelf life. But again, there's that injury concern that you don't really have with a guy like Terry McLaurin. So it's just, this was one that when I was looking at it, there was just a lot of question marks for me. And I feel like he might be an asset that that can even rise in into his 30s in terms of dynasty value, or at least maintain. Maybe not rise, but I think he's going to maintain maybe longer than we expect. So he was a guy who went a little later. I like one pick before me in our draft, and I was like, damn, that was one I think that I would have liked to have at the ADP he's going. So yeah, that's all I got there. And I think he's going like, what would you say, wide receiver 24. So yeah, I mean, that's like a really palatable price for a wide receiver of his caliber in production.
Yeah. I'd be shocked if he finished higher than wide receiver 24 this next coming year. So, if you're looking for points, right, I think it's pretty good value.
Yeah, you mean lower? You mean later?
Yeah, like a lower number.
Yeah,
whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was kind of get confused how people use that, like, higher in ADP or lower in ADP. Is like higher as in like closer to
he
one?
Also, he's one of those guys who you may be able to trade back and get like a first on top of from like a guy like, I don't know, T Higgins, or I mean, I like T Higgins, so like I'm whatever, but like those kind of players, you may be able to trade back in like a contender mode, get a first, get the production. You know what I mean? And play that kind of game. Or like, there's probably some package deals that would work with that kind of player. But all right, enough on McLaurin.
It's all good. All right. So a couple of topics here before we get into our prospect profiles. This one's good because we're in the startup now. We're doing Dynasty Underdog Listener League number 5, Cinco if you must. And it's been a blast. It's just fun. Just kind of like, I feel like if you're the type of dude that has a podcast, or you're analyst of any type, like I feel like you need a super
specific dude.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be on the airwaves at all, talking about this stuff, like you should at least do a startup every year.
I've said that for a long time too.
Otherwise you're not really that in touch.
It's hard to gauge the market without being in the market. Yeah.
So it's good. But anyways, pressure to pick. So typically we do 8-hour clocks or 10-hour clocks, pause in the middle of the night because it's fucking February. And we don't have to start a lineup for a long, long time. So
everybody's so jacked. Draft, no.
I know what's going on. We can get for another round tonight. It's like, oh well. But yeah, don't let people rush you in a slow draft. Slow clock is meant to give time. And I'm Billy as well. I'm going to take time to make a good decision. And I just think that this is great. I feel like it's conscientious, or it's courteous to when you make your selection to maybe just put in the chat, hey, next dude's on the clock, and just leave it at that. He's been known. We all know how long the clock is, and take as much time as you need, man. Like, try to work out some trades, do whatever, make an informed decision, ask a buddy or 2 or 3, like, hey, this is what the board looks like. What would you do here? And just don't harp on it. Like, don't be an asshole and like try to pressure people to pick fast. Like, if you feel pressured to pick, 9 times out of 10, you're going to regret like who you picked, because you're going to look at your MFL app or your sleeper app or whatever, and you'll be like, okay, here's the top 5 guys in ADP, like in February. And you're like, well, I'll take one of these guys. But really, there's a lot of dudes that like aren't there represented in ADP quite yet that should be who you are selecting. And if you took a lot of time to actually go through that process, you would realize, oh shit, like these dudes have fallen. So how do you feel about it?
No, I mean, that's great stuff for sure. Yeah, like, listen, I want to get to my pick as fast as possible. I'm looking at everybody else and I'm like, just please draft, because like I want to get to my pick, of course. But you know me, and you're in the drafts with me, you're in the leagues with me. I'm not saying that. I'm not like, hey, go. Like Uriah said, I think it's courteous to hit them with an on the clock, because a lot of people, they only get notifications if they're tagged, correct? And if it's been 2.5, 3 hours, yeah, sure, give them another tag, like say, hey, what's up? Like, that's not a big deal. But don't like, hey, like, let's keep it moving, let's go. Like there was, and it's funny because, and we're going to talk about more draft stuff. We'll actually go through the draft when Jake's back and we're done with our draft. But this is definitely some stuff coming from the current draft we're in and just being in draft mode. But it's like, there's some people in our draft who are giddy as hell to draft, and like I'm excited about it. I'm glad they are. We have a great group of guys, like great group of guys. But it's funny because you're just like, for me, it's what you said. I want to take as much time as possible to make a very calculated evaluation of where I need to go, what could happen based on what I do here, and what other people's current drafts are looking like. Could they potentially be going on could we be going on a certain position run because everybody still needs a quarterback and there's not many left, like whatever it is. So like, do I need to calculate how I'm going to manage how this is going to kind of waterfall to me? And so like, I like people are, that I'm like, I'm taking I might take an hour to like literally keep looking at shit. Like legitimately,
Yeah.
I'm really, I know that sounds insane, but it's like, you're making a decision that potentially could have a pretty long lasting impact, right? This isn't redraft. It's not like, 2-minute clock, like, yeah, whatever happens, like, it's all good. Like, no, like this is, you're going to maintain these rosters for a while, and you want to be pleased with how you constructed it, at least on the initial run. Right. And so I'm taking my time. Don't let people pressure you. Don't let people make you feel like you got to pick. If you're tagged, don't feel like that's what they're doing, because most of the time that's just kind of like a dynasty culture thing. It's like, if you're on the clock, somebody's tagging you that you're on the clock. It doesn't mean that you've been on the clock and they're like, everybody's waiting for you. Like, this asshole needs to move, and I know that's how it can feel because you're not always talking, and it's text, and it's, you might not know. So I just feel like that's a big part of it, because you can feel like a lot of pressure from your peers to like keep it moving and just make a pick. But like, you could wait, and I'm not saying take the 8 hours of the clock. That's ridiculous. Let's be honest. But like, if you need to take an hour or two because you're in the middle of your day and you want to look at some shit and you want to make sure you make a good decision, especially early in the draft, like, take your time. Like, it's okay. And you might get a trade done. That said, if you ask to get a trade done and nobody's hit you up in the first like 30 to 45 minutes, nobody's hitting you up. It's very unlikely somebody's hitting you up. So like,
Yeah.
there's a limit to all of this stuff. The 8 hours is there for overnight for people who cannot touch their phone during the workday. And that happens, of course. So you got to be courteous. But like, it's just one of those things I experienced during this draft, especially. And I mean, maybe it's each year it becomes, I become a little bit maybe more patient and slower with like how I'm going through my process. And so, I'm like, I don't mind taking a while. I enjoy that part of it.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, another thing is just like, I know I've been caught where I've been on the clock. I wake up, I'm on the West Coast, so I'm behind a little bit. Some folks, I still get up really early, but I realize, okay, I only have like 4 hours left. And like in my mind, I'm like, oh man, I've been on the clock for 4 hours. These dudes are waiting. And I know that in the past, I've made questionable decisions based on that, where I'm just like, I roll out of bed and I make a selection just to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Get up, get your coffee, take a shower, do whatever you got to do, brush your teeth.
I agree.
You shouldn't be making any decisions with funky breath in the first place. So just get up, do your thing. And nobody cares. At the end of the day, like, when the draft is over, nobody's going to be like, this asshole was taking 6 hours the whole time. Like, nobody's going to care. Everybody just wants to pick. But yeah, don't feel rushed.
We're not on MFL. You can't go down to the bottom and see how long everybody's taking. Don't worry. You see, average is 6 hours. Everybody else is like 20 minutes. It's like, damn, that boy is taking his time. But let him be. If we're, again, Uriah said we're in February, we got plenty of time. And once you're done with the draft, you're going to wish you were drafting something most likely. So just, enjoy it. Enjoy the process.
All right. Trade in permission. So why don't you talk about this?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, going through drafts, like in anything, I guess, that we do in the dynasty sphere, it's like when you're going through the process, at least for me, I'm constantly just trying to think of like different ways to attack things and different strategies that may benefit you. And so, going through this draft, this is definitely not a formula or anything like that. This is more just in practice, really noticing this. But if you know your league mates' tendencies, often you can know if they're going to go for certain players in certain spots, if they maybe are going to make poor decisions in certain spots, and maybe they're going to pick players that that you don't want. And so it's like, in those scenarios, if it's not going to put you far out of position, of course, everything is contextual. Like it matters. Like if, this trade is going to put you at the beginning of the next round or something, or it's going to like put you back 20 spots. Like there's, that's not ideal, but if you're if you're in a decent range, it's like, why not let them trade into your picks, especially if it's, a larger tier where you're not like really looking for one of these players that's in this range, and you may be able to get a similar piece by trading back, allow others to jump in, make a mistake, at least by your estimation, make a mistake first. Right. And so that's kind of the idea. And it's really just more about, I think this goes back to kind of knowing who your league mates are. If you can really understand that part of it, you can better utilize a strategy like this. And again, I think it's more moving in like micro windows than it is like making these large scale moves or anything. It's like, oh, if I'm moving, 6 picks back, 8 picks back, but I'm picking up a decent plus. And I know that like there's not only am I sending somebody who I think might make a pick that I certainly don't want, there's other couple people in front of me who maybe, there's guys at high ADPs and they're probably going to do that kind of thing. It's like, okay, then why not just allow somebody, who's not going to do something maybe more heady and benefit from it. And so that's kind of the idea of it, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, this would be part of the taking your time to pick thing where you can certainly do this. I mean, folks are always willing to like want to move up, move down, and all that other stuff. Like, I'm not a huge proponent of moving up myself, but this is a good way for you to go through the other 11 teams that are drafting with you and kind of just look at like their roster build, especially when it's in like the first, 10 picks, 11 picks, something like that. You say you got to start 10, start 11. Like that's when folks are really kind of looking at like, oh, I only have 2 running backs, or I only have like 2 wide receivers, and like, maybe not everyone drafts like that, but I think to a certain extent everybody does, where you're still trying to fill out a roster. So this is a good time where even if you don't know your league mates, you could at least look at what your league mates have drafted so far, and you can kind of guess what they might be needing or wanting. And I think that could really help you to give up your pick at a certain position if you realize, hey, the guy that's trying to move up only has 1 tight end. It's round 13 or something like that. He's going to want another one. I already have 2. The next 2 guys that pick after me, They already got theirs. Sure, he's probably shooting for that position. If not, it's fine. As long as you're okay in accepting that, say you're moving back 5 spots. If you're okay with the next 5 guys on your list going ahead, and you have to take the 6th guy that's on your list, if you're cool with that, then that's fine. But that's kind of just goes with taking your time to pick and don't feeling pressured. Like these are things that you could really do that are smart that like, I don't think that every dynasty manager does. I think a lot of it is less calculated. I don't think it takes a lot of time for you to do a small calculation and think, hey, I don't necessarily need to pick right now. If I move back 6 spots, I'm going to be just fine with who's there available for me based on my team build right now. So I like it.
Yeah, and that's the trade-in permission. Like I love that. I love putting names to things because I think it allows you to remember them, allows you to kind of put them in practice as a strategy going forward into the future. And I feel like in multiple spots for multiple reasons, knowing that managers were going to take certain players, right? And also just simply, I think this goes both ways. It's not just that. It is that. That's a great part of it. That's a more nuanced part of it, an extra piece to it. But it's also simply, this is just also recognizing tiers and understanding that you can move back a little bit, like Uriah saying, it's if they're going to take a couple of these guys, I know that I don't, boom, that's good enough. But then if you add on to it, knowing your league mates, add on to it that maybe you're more certain that XYZ is going to happen, you can better position yourself and foresee, almost predict what's going to happen again in micro windows, not 2 rounds from now. That's not what I'm saying. That's too far. That's too much. And you'll notice I rarely move that far back until like late in the draft, which I don't mind, if we're in the 15, 16, 17, 18 round, I don't give a shit about that. But it's like, if we're, especially in the single digit rounds, I don't mind moving like 5 or 6 spots. If you go back and look at our drafts a lot of the time, and I like being at the double on the back end. This is another reason, because I feel like you can make some unique moves, positioning yourself where you still have 2 picks near each other, but you can move back 5, 6 spots, not far, gain some extra value in the future or whatever, still be in a tier, get a guy that you still were okay with, and then keep it moving. And it just kind of allows you for a lot more flexibility when you kind of think about it that way. Getting back into draft season was really fun because I felt unprepared. Then I got really like prepared within a week or so, and then I kind of like got all back in. It like all came rushing back of like all the strategies, and I'm like, okay, we're good. Yeah, it's like the meme of like seeing like the math everywhere. Yeah,
it's been fun. Definitely been fun.
It's been good. Yeah.
All right. Last little topic here before we do our prospect profile. So this comes from Buddy in the Discord, Lapisaurus, also in our DU5 startup. How do this? I guess this is more for you. How do you determine a player-to-player basis on the 1 to 5 grading scale? What is a 1 versus 5, and how do you keep that objective?
Yeah, I mean, this was something he brought up in the Discord. I think you may have mentioned that, but it is such a great question because, like, when you talk about scouting, these are kind of like the nuances that people are sometimes interested in, like us, who are just like junkies with this shit. We just like enjoy understanding how the process is kind of created from person to person, knowing that there's some level of subjectivity, of course, and it's hard to kind of understand and gauge how people are maybe grading players. And so, to this question about, how you are determining on a player-to-player basis that 1 to 5 grading scale, like what is 1 versus 5? Like, how are you getting there? It's something, especially when everybody starts out, you're like, how do I determine this? But I think, you can start, and I think one of the most important places is defining a trait or defining traits that you want to grade, right? For example, just like one, curvilinear movement, right? And that's like a more, maybe sounds like complex, but it's not at all. It's like bend, right? But bend at the knee and hip motion that conforms to a known or fixed curve, right? And that allows you to really identify when somebody is actually bending versus not, or at some level, you can create a scale in your head maybe, and I'll continue talking about this a little bit, but of what bend at 1 versus 5 is, right? And we'll get more into, like, I think how you can kind of provide yourself a litmus test for that. But the better you can define it, the easier it is to standardize the rating scale, of course. But I think it helps to also limit the rating over time. I've come around to limiting the rating more to a 1 to 5 than like a 1 to 10, because for each attribute, because I think it allows for less subjectiveness as you kind of tighten up the scope, rather than having a scale that's a little bit wider. It makes for, I think, tougher decisions, and it allows you to kind of go further on the scale than maybe you need to for certain players, trying to maybe be more judicious. And so I think tightening up the scope is better. But at the end of the day, it's almost like an internal mental visual analog scale. Like, if you ever seen those, like, it's like in the doctor's office for like a kid, it's like, how bad are you feeling, like 1 to 10, and you see on the scale, like, happy, sad, like whatever, up to green to red, that whole thing. If you can kind of do that for like 1 to 5 in your head for these scales, it really allows you quickly to grade these guys out in those attributes when you see, a couple games worth of footage. Now, obviously, determining what 1 to 5 is tough, but so when you look at a specific class, right, like 2025 class, you don't want to like be like, okay, Ashton Genty is a 5, so Woody Marks is a 2. Like, that's not how you want to, I think, create or compare your attribute grades across. What you want to do, I think, is look to the NFL, right? The gold standard. Understand.
Yes, thank you for
what a guy like Saquon Barkley looks like, right? And there's plenty of other guys, but I think he's a really good one because he's like in the spotlight right now with the Super Bowl champion Eagles. He was incredible this year. He has great bend, right? Great agility. There's all these different attributes he has. Do you think that Saquon Barkley is the best running back that there has ever been, or is in that tier, right? You kind of find these guys, you look at them and you say, like, does the way his knees bend, does the way his hips bend, is that a 5 on a scale to you? Like, what where does that fall? And then I think from there, if you do this with a couple of guys, you watch some LaDainian Tomlinson, you watch some of these incredible backs, you kind of look and see the vision, how their head moves before the play, they're reading the field, all these different things, right? You can kind of start determining what some of these grading scales look like for you. And look, Matt Waldman's going to have a different scale than me, than a different scale than what's the other Matt? But all these different Hartman and Zerline, and they're all going to have different 1s versus 5s, that for their scale. But I think that you have to for sure get yourself outside of the class, and a lot of this is going to be built by experience, because you need time to look at a bunch of different players to kind of, I think, build a more consistent scale, right? You want to build that depth of knowledge for what 1 versus 5 is over a large set of players. And over time, it just becomes much more natural where you're like, okay, this is, versus these players that I've watched, this is above that average or below that average. And if they're elite, if it's above that, it's like, wow, okay, this may be a 4.55. Like, let's watch a little bit more of this. Let's dig into this. Maybe you even go back and watch some of those old players where you're like, this is what equals great to me. And at some level, that is how it has to be. You have to look at there's no other way to build it, right? Like, you can't just out of thin air be like, 5 bend is this, because you've never seen it. Like, if you don't have a reference point, right? So you have to have that reference point at some level, built by experience, and I think like the amount of players you've seen in the different buckets, pretty much. And so very long-winded there, but I think the only last thing is if you grade them out over a long period of time with a consistent standardized scale. For me, like, I just changed my grading system a little bit this year, so like comparing that to like the last 2 years would be useless in terms of comparison as that goes. But if you have a consistent scale like Waldman does over many years, you can also compare backwards, I think. Never again within the same class in terms of grading them. You let that fall how it is, and then you compare them. But you can look back over time at all the elite players that are within, if it's out of 100, 90 to 100 or 85 to 100, what do these guys look like? What does that grade look like? What did they actually look like on the field? And then kind of, apply that to the current class you're grading. So long-winded again, but that's how I go about building the scale pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I'll add is not from a film review standpoint, but that's one thing that crossed my mind was like the only way you'd be able to build that kind of scale to understand what a 5 in your mind is to actually watch the grades, right? The historical comps, which is the exact same thing we do with the spreadsheets, is what historically has been a good, I don't know, yards per route run versus man, what's been historically a good, A dots versus slot usage, things like that. You have to have a baseline. You have to have some history there. So if you're going to go into it with the film review type of deal, you have to take time and actually watch the really good guys. Like, how is Tyler Lockett always open? How did Jason Witten always stay open into his 30s? Why was Megatron just bossing people's like Andre Johnson? Like, you got to go and watch the really, really, really good guys. And from there, you'd be like, well, this is why they had succeeded. This is what they're really good at. And that's where you set your 5 at, is essentially what you're saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it. And like, at some level, if you're this interested in it, you've already been doing that. Like, you've just been watching these guys' highlights for years, or you've been watching the game for years. And you kind of, like, for me, that is where it kind of started. Was I watched the game at just kind of an analytical level when I was just a fan, like, I'd want to watch it by myself because I hated people talking to me, all that shit. And I'm just like,
yes.
I'm like actually watching, like, look at how he moved and did this, and it's like, so like for me, it was kind of the movement and it's like always been like a study of movement for me in some way. And so I've always been kind of watching it that way. So then when I started when I like got into Dynasty, I was like, oh shit, like this may be really useful. And then I was like, oh, you can grade this stuff out. Like, it kind of all like, unfolded over time. And I was like, wow, this is something I might be decent at because I like it a lot. I've been looking at it this way, and now I already had kind of the reference point naturally built for me. Like, I was watching LaDainian Tomlinson when he was that good,
Yes.
and obviously I wasn't watching the greats before that, but that then I started watching YouTube, like, let me see these guys like back in the day. And it's so you kind of over time, for me, it was natural. But I think, what you're saying is true. If you've never done that, or if you're new to the game, or if you haven't had that historic, journey, you're probably going to need to take at least a mini one. But also, to your point, I think in rookie scouting, it's probably easy for especially people who aren't like that deep into it, who don't want to like go crazy with it. They're like, we know Bijan's number one. I don't need to watch Bijan. We know, but it's like that is all part of it. Like, you got like Ashton Genty. It's like, I know he's great, and like I want to watch all these other guys because I'm not as familiar. But it's like at some level you got to come back and watch Ashton Genty. You have to, and you have to grade that out so you can have that reference, that experience, understand what this guy moves like, because he is great. He is elite in some aspects. So it's like you need to understand how these guys move. If you're not watching Bijan, if you're not watching all these guys because they were so good, and you're like, yeah, they're running back one, it doesn't matter. In terms of the scouting, you're doing yourself a disservice, in my opinion. So like this is titled subjective scouting scales, but I think over time, if you do it this way, it becomes much more objective. Granted, it's going to be within that subjective umbrella of your reference, because no matter what, there's a ton of subjectivity within this process. You can't say a 5 is this, like they're human movements and humans, it's like I think it's very difficult to do that without some like AI program like thing looking at every player in the history of time. But don't let me give them any ideas. That said, this was just a topic that I thought was really interesting, brought up by Lapisaurus. So I really appreciate it. I think that the scouting process is super interesting. And so I hope people found this interesting as well.
Excellent. All right. Let's move on to some prospect profiles. We'll have 2 wide receivers for you tonight, 2 running backs for you tonight. I'll get Jake's scouting profile out of the way. Jake says he prefers Matthew Golden over Isaiah Bond, and he prefers RJ Harvey over DJ Giddens. And I think we probably both go to, just my guess. So let's get into it. Both the Texas wide receivers, Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond. I remember these are 2 guys I looked at very early on when we were like the first 2 guys I really looked at early on, and I had to hit you guys up in the group chat and was like,
oh yeah, I remember that.
What's the difference? Because I could, so I'll just go through kind of what I saw here in the sheets real quick, and I'll compare and contrast them here, do the Control C, Control Y thing here, and just back and forth. So, if you don't mind, I'll just do them both.
Oh, go hustle, man, do your thing. Yeah.
So I got Isaiah Bond here, early declare, which is great. Not a ton of production though. Never cracked 1,000 yards for what that's worth, but yak per receptions, a dot of 14.6, which is sweet. 22.6% out of the slot. 1 yard per team pass attempt, and a yard per route run at 1.78. And those are just not great numbers to have historically, right? As we talk about how do you scout? Well, you look at the guys who have been good historically, and the guys who have been good historically are above 1 yard per team pass attempt and above 1.78 yards per route run. First down per route run is 8.58, which is fine. I still have not dug into that a lot, but his contested catch percentage is 27.3, not great. Man yards per route run, 0.52. No way to sugarcoat it. That's bad. Zone yard per route run, 2.2. Great. So he's good against zone. NFL teams run a lot of zone, so hopefully there's some hope there. His average dominator is 15.9%. Never broke out. Honestly, just a dude coming out early. That's kind of all I got there. Matthew Golden, same team. His yak is a lot less. 5.2 yards after the catch per reception. His ADOT's about the same, 13.5. Played from the slot here. Isaiah Bond was 22.6 and Matthew Golden 23.9. Yards per team pass attempt 1.8. It's a little bit better than Bond. Still not great. His yards per route run 2.1. Just barely hits that bucket for me. Contested catch rate though 61.1%. So I'm guessing this guy has a little bit better hands, body control, those types of things than Isaiah Bond exhibits. I think that just by looking at them, I watched a little bit. It looks like Matt Golden is actually built a little bit better uh, than Isaiah Bond. It appears to be. But his man per yard per route run is 0.98. Again, not good at all. A zone yard per route run, 2.54. So I don't know if this is just a wide receiver thing or if this is a offensive scheme thing that is allowing these guys to have similar production at similar areas of the field in similar situations. His average dominator is 18.4. Again, never cracked 20. That's not great. Early declare, breakout age of 20. So late break or old breakout, early declare.
Yeah.
These guys, especially Matthew Golden, I've seen might hit the first round of the NFL draft based on mocks I've seen. I don't think either of these guys are first round players. What do you got?
I mean, yeah, I think that's a good assessment, at least at the end there, in terms of I don't know if they're first round players. I think they're probably second round type players in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
And I mean, you would hope in the rookie drafts, but that's probably that may be a reach. I haven't looked at the ADP recently, but it is interesting that both these guys are very similar in terms of the yards per out run, both of them overall, and then the split with the man and zone coverage. Nothing really stands out in terms of scheme related to why that's the case. So they're very similar guys, to be honest with you. There's a couple differences, and it does show up in the data as well as the film. The yards after the catch, Isaiah Bond is definitely more dynamic after the catch for sure. And then you see better ball skills with a guy like Matthew Golden. So I'll just really quick go through both of them individually. I'm going to go through Isaiah Bond first here. And I'll just say they graded out very similarly. Golden just ahead of Bond. But with Bond, he's a quality route runner with great burst through the stem of the route, exhibits good footwork and some stem nuance, but could be improved, displays good release technique and diverse concepts to beat press, but can also be locked down by more physical coverage. Good, not great hands, above average ball tracking, but can struggle in contested situations, above average burst and speed, flashes of elusiveness, but would like to see more upside in terms of yak and balance to stay on feet after the catch. And that's Isaiah Bond. So actually, I think a lot of what I said there is kind of reflective of what Uriah said in terms of the data with the contested catch stuff, all of that. And again, I don't look at the data before I do my my film evaluations. I just want to go and clean, And I think I think both of these guys are actually pretty quality route runners, above average for the most part. Again, not really great catch radius or body control from Isaiah Bond. I think you even mentioned that may be part of the problem, but pretty good hands, pretty good ball tracking. The athleticism is really there again after the catch. Not exceptional traits that could really unlock upside, but he does have great burst and speed, like to do something at the next level. No doubt about that. Pretty good awareness. Okay blocker, engaged, but not overly powerful. And again, some of it goes to the size of these guys. And I remember when you did ask me ask us back in maybe a month ago or so, when we started about these guys, I thought Matthew Golden was a little bigger for some reason. I don't know what it was, but both these guys are very light. Like they're both, I mean, maybe what are they, around 6 foot, both of them?
I think they're like both 6 foot, 190-ish.
Yeah. So
Golden looks bigger.
Golden looks bigger, but I don't know. He almost looks smaller sometimes to me, to be honest with you, but he does look bigger. That's why I thought that initially. So no doubt about it. But getting into his evaluation, actually Matthew Golden's quite a bit ahead. I had a 63 grade on Isaiah Bond and a 67.5 on Matthew Golden. And so Matthew Golden, excellent route technique and outstanding ball skills, well above average ball tracking in hands. He makes some incredible catches, especially, again, we're talking about his size, in coverage with defenders in his face or around his face, turning his body. Really, really good body control. Good ability to beat press with speed and quickness from release, fairly diverse release package, mainly standard double single moves with some shuffle slipped in off the line. So he does do some stuff, but I think it could be refined a little bit more. maybe a little bit more diverse at the end of the day. Displays micro movements, mid route and above average pacing to lull defenders before using suddenness at the top of the route to create separation. Good, not great after the catch. Doesn't exhibit plus lateral agility or elusiveness despite great balance for his frame. Good field vision, but lacks sideline and zone awareness at times. He didn't get too dinged for most of that. A little bit on the zone awareness. Tenacious blocker, but lacks strength and size. So he does get in on the blocking, but he graded really well in some of the route technique stuff in terms of stem nuance and beating press. Above average in every single category in terms of reception, manipulation, movement, footwork, pacing, all that stuff. Again, great, not elite. Ball skills, exceptional ball skills. Like I gave him 4.5 out of 5 in ball tracking and hands. I just think that this is Matthew Golden. Yeah, this is Matthew Golden. Yeah. I just think that he has absolutely exceptional hands. So like, I think this guy has a place in the league at the next level for sure. But I think where the downside comes in is the athleticism, like compared to Isaiah Bond. I almost wish you could just like put the athleticism Isaiah Bond has on Matthew Golden, merge them like Dragon Ball Z, just like, we need them combined. But he is good from an athletic standpoint, really good burst, really good speed, but the elusiveness isn't really there. It's okay balance, decent yak ability after the catch, but really nothing like really pops, where you're like, holy crap, this guy's a game breaker. So I think that's where we kind of, his profile kind of falls apart a little bit in terms of that elite upside that we're always looking for in fantasy. He can still be a really good player. So yeah, that's pretty much the profiles with these guys. I think they're very similar, but they're also different in key aspects of the receiving game, right? Just one much better with the ball, one much better after the catch. It's pretty much how it goes. You can pick your flavor. Yeah. For me, I'm most of the time going to side with the route technician ball, ball skill guy. That's pretty much what I'm gonna lean to every time.
Good. Another one which is great. I think every single one that we've done so far, the film and the data has really matched up pretty well. So I kind of like that.
Getting better. It took us
like 6 fucking years, but here we are.
Yeah. All right. No, it definitely is. Mm-hmm.
So a couple running backs. We'll start with the running back out of UCF. RJ Harvey?
Yeah, RJ Harvey.
Look at me. Mm-hmm. I'm such a college ball watcher. So yeah, RJ Harvey. I got a shout out to Billy. I gave him some guff in the chat when he's like, let's do RJ Harvey. I'm like, that guy is terrible. Just honestly, somebody I hadn't really even heard about and didn't stand out at first glance in the sheets. But I did watch him because I think running backs I definitely need to watch. Helps me mirror what I see a lot better. Personally, for me, the numbers on the sheet, it's really harder for me to like look at that and say, oh, that's a really good running back. So I do need to watch them because I think some running backs look goofy, and I just don't want goofy looking running backs on my team. So RJ Harvey, 3.8 yards after contact per attempt. Again, that's not really great. I mean, you would like to see something a little bit closer to 5, but his elusive rating per PFF is a 122.2. That's a really good rating from PFF. Full disclosure, I'm sure not entirely sure how that translates to feature production, but I do know that's a high grade from them. So
I'm pretty sure there's a good amount of predictiveness to that one. I don't know the exact numbers on it, but I know it's like supposed to be out of like 100. So when you're like over 100 or well over 100, it's pretty significant.
Yes. I just look back, like historically, people with the elusive rating, over 100 have been pretty decent running backs. His missed tackle force percentage is 29.8. It's almost 30%. Like that's a really good threshold. That is one of the most predictable stats that you have for running backs is missed tackle force percentage. His yards per team attempt is 2.2. That's not bad. I mean, we've seen some really crazy ones this year with the class we have right now, but I think historically 2.2 is really good. His yards per route run as a running back, 1.34. That's nothing to scoff at. That's really good. Anything over really like 1.1 is pretty good number. So, and then his breakaway percentage is 52.4. That's also a pretty good number. what I saw from RJ Harvey is like he looks pretty fast, looks pretty decisive. I like this running back. I don't know where he's going to be going drafted. I didn't look it up with the mock draft database, but I'm guessing he's probably like a day 3 pick, late day 2 pick. But I think he, considering the running back free agent class this year and the age of the running backs that are going to be staying on some teams, this is a type of player that I think could have a career in the NFL, even being drafted a little bit later than other players. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. I think that's a good read on it. He does have good pass catching ability, which I think teams are going to be really interested in. Pretty good mover. For me, I think he's going to come somewhere in kind of the 6 to 8 range. Maybe he comes in 5th in terms of film grade at 64.5. Well-rounded dynamic back who displays great lateral agility and elusiveness. Where he lacks power, he offers exceptional burst. Lacks long speed, displays good indirect contact balance, but struggles with direct hits. Fundamentally sound, excellent footwork, reliable pass catcher, demonstrating great route technique and ball tracking for a running back. Would like to see more consistent yards after contact. Excellent pass protector as well. So again, a well-rounded guy who can catch the ball. Pretty good athleticism, above average in terms of elusiveness and agility. Good yak ability, good bend. Great vision all around, really. Like I said, he's an exceptional blocker, very good technique and strength. So I think, as kind of like one of those pass catching backs who can stay in there and pass protect, like he's going to get a shot. He's going to get some opportunities, and he has good rush technique. So all around, I like RJ Harvey. I got nothing bad to say about this guy, really. He's just not elite. So, I mean, if that's saying something bad about a guy, then I guess I'm saying something bad about him. But he's above average in almost every aspect that I grade out.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. So the next one will be, I think, Kansas City State.
Kansas State, yeah.
Kansas City State, yeah. Kansas State, DJ Giddens. This is a guy that I asked Billy about a while back just because Dallas Cowboys, shout out insider information, Dallas Cowboys did hire Kansas State's running back coach, who happens to be same place one of our offensive linemen went to. Anyways, it's all there. It's all intertwined, so I get excited as a Cowboys fan. But I did watch him a little bit. Again, I'm not as nuanced as Billy, but I did not see the same stuff that I like out of Giddens that I did from Harvey. And you could talk about that later. But yeah, his yards after contact per attempt is a little bit better than DJ Harvey's or RJ Harvey's.
RJ, yeah.
4.1. That's decent. It's fine. His elusive rating is 108.1. Missed tackle force is at 25%, which is good. You don't want to see anything below that, really. There's not a lot of success for guys who have below 25%. His yards per team attempt is 1.9. I mean, we call that 2. That's a lot for just a running back in terms of actual yards for the team per attempt, right? So it shows he's a pretty decent part of that offense. His yards per route run, 1.1, means he can catch the ball. Don't know how often he was asked to do that. Breakaway percentage was 54.9, and he's an early declare. So young guy getting called up to the NFL, didn't need to go back to school for any reason. That's a plus. All in all, he's fine. What do you got?
Yeah. I mean, I also like RJ Harvey slightly better. Again, I think I had him at a 64.5. I have Giddens at a 63. So it's not by much, but getting into the breakdown, I think Giddens is an aggressive, fundamentally sound runner. He offers above average power combined with good burst and elusiveness, above average vision, high end, fast processor pre-snap, and at the second level, above average direct contact balance, demonstrates ability to shrink through creases in the defense and navigate traffic. Questionable hands, but good route technique and transition speed. I think he's a liability in pass protection, though. So that could be a problem at the next level for him. Could present some issues in terms of playtime. I just think he lacks technique, loose and timid, lacks a base, and leans forward a lot. Not sure he's ever been seen touching a defender, to be honest with you. He just kind of misses in every aspect of the pass protection technique, but as a runner of the ball, he's very good. Above average rush technique in general. I mentioned the contact balance, good gait, good footwork. For the most part, good vision. The second level diagnostics are real. Like you can see him reading the field, his head moving, making decisions, deceiving defenders. Calculated evasiveness is what I call it. Where he kind of can see a guy out of his peripheral, make a move, and evade them. You can actually watch his head turning back and forth pre-snap, dissecting the defense and effectively executing what he's looking at and kind of the decisions that he's made pre-snap. And so, just a decisive runner, not much time wasted behind the line or deciding where to go. The athleticism is decent. I think he has really good bend, above average power and agility and elusiveness. I think he lacks some burst and long speed. Like you do see him kind of get taken down and not really finishing runs off. So I think that's where, that's where he's going to struggle at the next level. And if he struggles in college, then he's going to have a problem with that at the next level as well.
Yeah. From just what I watched, I was going to mention that. It seemed like on his big, long breakaway runs, a lot of them were finished on the field and not the end zone.
Correct. Yes.
So I don't want to call him a plotter or anything. That's just, but yeah, it does look like as you're saying, if this is happening to him in the college ranks, then I think you'll see a lot of that in the NFL as well. So cool. Awesome. That was RJ Harvey, DJ Giddens, Matthew Golden, and Isaiah Bond, both the wide receivers from Texas.
That was good. I like that. Those are some interesting prospects. I think, especially the running backs, will be a little bit more mid to late, second round, third round guys at the end of the day. But I think they have some ability. Like again, DJ Giddens lacks that long speed, but somehow he's like super quick side to side, and he offers, I think, something for NFL teams. So I like RJ Harvey more. But I think those guys are going to be really interesting to look at as we head into the rookie drafts this year. Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden, I think they're going to be a little bit higher end prospects, and I think we're gonna hear a little bit more about them, see them maybe approach the first round type DC. So they'll be more in our faces as we head into the draft process as well. But good stuff, Uriah. Love it.
I agree. All right, let's get out of here. We still have trades going on, which is sweet. This would be yours, I'm assuming. Debbie trade?
Yeah, Debbie trade. I mean, there's been some Dynasty trades going on. We had quite a few trades in the startup draft, but
I know it'd be fun to dissect those. Those are just so hard.
I think, we talked about draft stuff a little bit today. Again, when Jake is back, when we're done with the draft fully, I'm making notes as I go along. And also I think we'll be able to talk about some of this stuff, like some of the drafts, the trades we made, like the startup trades and what we did with them. Like I know you made some drafts or some trades before the draft got started. So I think that'll be really interesting to be able to go back and look at that. You're back. I saw you were frozen. But I don't know if you heard me, but anyway, I think it'll be really good. I think we can go back and look at some of those trades that were made and dissect those post draft. So we'll do that for sure.
Cool. All right. So this trade is yours. You traded Jeremiah Smith, Drake London for Jamar Chase and Jaden Greathouse. Shout out for folks that want to hear a name that they haven't heard before who only played Dynasty. Tell me about Jaden Greathouse.
I got to let the people know about the Debbie guys a little bit around here. Right?
Yes.
I've had some good success in Debbie, to be quite honest. A few Debbie leagues. I mean, I've had quite a bit of success on the Debbie side of things, and also just in those leagues. But this is a C2C league, and in that league, my NFL team has been to the finals every year and has lost every year. One of those years was the COVID year, so asterisk. But the NCAA side, exactly. The NCAA side, though, is the NCAA side is a farm team for my NFL team, essentially. So it's basically getting the 101 every year, and I'm going to cash in on the NFL side every year, and that's kind of the way I've been playing it. I had Jeremiah Smith, and the calculation in my head was, I'm not going to use Jeremiah Smith for anything. It's 2027, bro. Like, is when he's coming out. Like, I'm gonna have to wait that long while he's sitting on my crappy NCAA roster, and then he comes out and maybe he's as great as we all think, or I could trade him right now, plus a really good player, granted, Drake London, for Jamar Chase, the wide receiver 1, for probably a couple years to come, if not more, And so for me, it was a pretty easy I mean, he's what, 25, 26 years old. Like, he could easily be wide receiver 1 for the next 3 years, and have a great career after that too. And so that's really the calculation I was making here, getting that elite upside, that infinity stone, as the Superflex Super Show calls it. Instead of having Drake London, I feel like, yes, this was a lot to pay to upgrade to Jamar Chase, but I feel like the upside on a game-to-game basis is kind of worth it, in my opinion. That's really where I was. Jaden Greathouse, I didn't care that much, to be honest. He's a Notre Dame wide receiver in his second year, maybe his like third, because he had like a year something happened or whatever. But 46 catches, 500 yards, 15 yards per reception. He's okay, whatever. Probably be nothing. Decent prospect though, 4-star prospect. So having him added on to it, I'm like, whatever, I'll take him, and hopefully he turns into something. But this was all about Jamar Chase, So I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I love it. It's the thing is, got to cash in on Jeremiah Smith in this format, because, like you said, you can't use him. He's NFL ready, but I mean, there's a lot of time.
But the NFL ain't ready for him,
Yes. So he's still got it. He's got 2 full seasons.
Yeah, like, what am I doing these 2 full seasons with him?
Yes.
What do I have Jeremiah Smith if not for this move? This is what it's for.
Yep. No, I love it.
The only
this
thing
works out really good for you.
The only thing I could think about is maybe I could have gotten more back, because Drake London is great and Jeremiah Smith is great.
Yeah.
But I'm also, the calculation is like, Jamar Chase is the best. So it's like, how much can I really push here? Also, he had put him on the market to everybody, and I'm like, if I don't get him and somebody else does, I'm gonna feel like really shitty about that, considering I won't have anything to do with Jeremiah Smith for the next 2 years. And like, is anything else really worth trading Jeremiah Smith than Jamar Chase in such a good situation with Burrow? That they're gonna retain him. Like, it just felt so right. So I think there's some hesitation there for sure. But at the end of the day, if you're in a Devy league and you have a player like this is what you're supposed to do with them. If you're even close, I think top 4 team, you got to jump in there and grab one of those, again, Superflex Super Show Infinity Stones, and make your team all that much better. So that was the idea here. I figured I'd throw it out because I do think a lot of people right now, with the hype around Jeremiah Smith, would look at this and be like, Jeremiah Smith, you know what I mean? And I don't think it's that clear cut. I don't.
Not yet. I mean, by the time Jeremiah Smith makes it to the NFL, it's going to be Jeremiah Smith over Jamar Chase, but that's still 2 years worth of winning.
It should be.
Yeah,
but you don't know. Like, Jeremiah Smith, we've seen the greatest prospects fail. Kyle Pitts fail. I think Jeremiah Smith is going to be one of the best wide receivers we've ever seen. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm all in on this train. I've been telling you about this guy since like the minute that anybody knew about him. But I just think that there's that possibility. And when you can get the thing that you hope he is, it's like you just do that, with almost whatever it takes, because the advantage on a week-to-week basis is that great. You go on Dynasty Daddy, anybody, that tool is so great, the War tool. Plug in your league and go look at how much Jamar Chase is a league breaker compared to all the other players around him. And it's just kind of worth it to get up there, at least right now. So, that's my spiel.
Love it. Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No. I mean, other than all our listeners, join the Discord. If you haven't yet, we love talking to you guys. A lot of good stuff going on in there. I'm excited to continue the prospect profiles. These are great, man.
Yes, sir.
That's all I got.
All right. Everyone join the Discord. It's awesome. Subscribe to YouTube, all that stuff. Check us out on the socials. Other than that, just have a good night. See you next week.
Peace out. Later.